In this video, I'm going to make this. Yeah, let's get a better angle on that. That looks better. Alright, let's make it. I'm going to start off this project like I start off all of my other projects, with a very expensive slab that I cannot afford to mess up on. And if you're interested, this slab cost around $1,000. And that's because it's a giant slab of solid white oak that is over 2 inches thick. It's surprisingly difficult to get this stuff, but it just so happens to be the perfect material to build this ladder. And that's because it's a strong independent wood that won't let you tell it what to do. Now that I have the pieces of wood to a more reasonable, easier to work with size, I'm going to cut out all of the rungs and all of the rails for this project. So this piece and this piece. But there's a fundamental issue with that. So where all the joints are going to connect the rungs and the rails, I want there to be a nice curve like you can see here in that corner that kind of slopes and curves. But I can't build everything on, a circle. Like, I want all the rungs to be a circle so they feel nice in the hand. So first I have to build everything like a square, which that's easy because once I glue it all together, I could just round it over and then it turns into a circle. But those joints, if I make them square and glue them together, well, there's a lack of material for me to then remove, leaving a round surface. So what I have to do is I have to build a little extra chunk of material into every spot where the rung connects to the rail. And then after it's glued up, I can then remove that extra material, leaving that profile. Now I'm sure you guys are thinking to yourself, wow, those drawings are truly awful, or crude, or childish, but that's actually what I base almost all of my work off of. Now, if that's alarming to you guys, well, it probably should be, but for me, trying to think out every single step just doesn't usually work. If I could just get a general thesis of what I'm going to do, then I find it just a lot more valuable to start the actual work and figure it out as I go than trying to plan out every little detail. And as silly as that last statement might be, that's how I kind of run my whole life. Like, take this project for example. At the time, I had no money, and if I messed up this project, I did not have enough money to refund the client, and I was going to lose all of the business that I've been trying to create this whole time. And as naive as it sounds, I really thought if I threw myself in the deep end, I would be able to figure it out, or at least I hoped. And at the end of the day, I would almost always rather try than sit there and think about what I would have done. And I think that's what I plan on doing with this channel. I just want to keep trying things that are enjoyable or I don't think will work, but they'd be really cool if they did. So if you guys want to keep seeing that, then consider subscribing. So if you guys remember when we talked about all that extra material that we needed for once the pieces were glued up, well, this is what I'm talking about. I'm using a template to get the curve pretty close to the way I want it. And that way, once it's all glued up, I can remove all of the extra material and have a really nice slope curve where all the rungs meet the rails. Now that the rungs are just about done, we need a way to attach the rung to the rail. So in comes the mortise and tenon. So we already have the tenon cut, but now we need to make a square hole or a mortise for all of the rungs to slide into the rails. This creates an extremely strong bond that hopefully will last generations. And I didn't know it at the time, but cutting 28 mortises was quite the monumental task. I figured this would take like 2 hours, but no, it ended up taking around 10 hours to cut all of these, because what I had to do is take my drill out 2 circular holes, and then use a chisel to hog off all of the extra material, which only takes about 25 minutes, but when you have to do 28 of them, it just adds up. And if you're thinking, there must be a tool that can make a square hole, well, there is. It's called a hollow chisel mortiser, but at the time I was too broke and too stubborn to justify getting one. And part of me just really wanted to do it by hand, because it just seemed really fun and made this project a lot more personal to me. And in hindsight, that was kind of silly because this took so much more effort than I thought it would, and the result just wasn't perfect like a hollow chisel mortiser would have been. But to this day, I still hand cut mortises, even though I have a mortiser, because look at that. I cut that by hand. There's something just so satisfying about that. Let me get a quick Insta promo for this, bro.
Oh, you haven't been recording at all.
No. You're kidding?
I'm not.
I just put the SD card in. Are you for real?
No.
It's just now recording. We bought this.
This is how Ty gets all his commission pieces done. He just buys one and then sells it for a higher price.
Well, I accidentally just didn't film us putting the rough up together, the dry fit, but it went together smooth. We used some clamps and just kind of tapped on it with the hammer, and it all slid together pretty nicely. The hardest part was getting to slide in evenly, but yeah, this is where we're at. It looks really good. Show you how it looks as actual ladder. It's kind of hard to hold right now because it hasn't been rounded over yet. That's what it's gonna be like. A ladder. That looks so fucking cool. This wood is like just so nice.
Show them what it's about to be though.
Yeah, it'll eventually, all of it will be round like that, and all these joints will be nice and tight and filed together. But yeah, that's where we're at. 8 hours of hand cutting mortises later. A lot of mortises. 20 something mortises.
Still got 2 more to go.
I got like 8 more to go, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, that was fun as fuck.
So yeah, it all slid together really good in the dry fit. Wish it was on video, but not the end of the world. And here's a bit of foreshadowing. Did you notice how all of the mortises and all the tenets were labeled so that each one would slide into the one it was custom cut for? That'll be important later. But anyways, now that I've gotten the main part of the ladder done, I need to get these little parts that stem off and attach it to the wall, as well as this handle that'll stick out helping the person climb up. Now the little piece that's going to hold the main ladder off the wall needs to be very strong because it's going to be holding the majority of the weight. So I'm making this like slot and then adding a piece of wood in there that's going to slot into the other piece of wood. I don't know what this joint would be called. It's not a half lap. It's not a Morrison tenon. It's something. So earlier when I was talking about I don't really plan out a lot of my builds, I just scribble and doodle and then make them. Well, this is where that kind of bites you in the butt. So that joint that we just made is now overlapping into one of the mortises to hold on that extra handle. But that's an easy fix. All I did was cut and chisel away a little bit of that extra material. But if I mess up this next part, it's not a simple fix. In fact, if I mess up this roundover cut at all, the entire rail will be ruined, and hundreds of dollars of material and a week or 2 of work will be completely thrown out. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of spots that I'm not rounding over, and that's because we're going to run into that same issue we had earlier, where we need that extra material to match up with the rail. If I just rounded over that entire side, well, where the rail matches the rung, there'll be a gap of missing material. So I want that to be a nice, flat, smooth transition. So I had to do this kind of stutter stepping, and I had to use an extra big bearing to offset the actual cutter itself, because when the bearing is referencing the part that's already cut, it'll be like 1/8 of an inch off and cut too deep. So long story short, that was quite the restless night before I made that cut, but I was even more stressed out about this next step.
Why will this not come out? I feel like this light expired or something. But there's no light expiration date.
Are these surfaces clean and dry?
Yeah.
Do the joints fit tightly?
Yeah.
Alright, that's all the fucking
I know, right? That's what I'm like.
nice, dude.
I mean, I cannot physically squeeze it harder. I mean, this stuff isn't that old.
No.
Ooh, that stuff stinks. I mean, it's made from dead deer, so. But
No shit, it stinks, dude.
I mean, it's hide glue, you know? It's made from old hides.
So as you can tell, I was having a lot of trouble with that glue, but nonetheless, it ended up working pretty good. But you remember how I was doing a little foreshadowing earlier? Well, you see right there how every time I'm applying glue, I'm flipping the rung over? Yeah, I just put in all of those rungs backwards, and it ended up cracking the rail, but it wasn't that bad. I was able to glue that section back together, and it ended up all being fine. But oh my god, I was so stressed and freaking out, and this glue up ended up taking a little bit over an hour.
All the rungs are upside down. That's what happened. These were supposed to be opposite. I didn't even realize it till like a second ago.
And you put it in upside down.
Yeah. Well, when that one started splitting out, I was like, got it now. I just, there's no gaps, but some of them are way too tight, you know? So, actually, I think there was one gap. Yeah, on this side. Oh, I'm not done clamping them. Yeah. I knew there was going to be some gaps on this, but I'm trying to minimize it. If I can get this one together, I'll be happy where it's at.
That just popped a little bit.
Yeah, that was what I was talking about when I realized it was upside down. Yeah, I got almost all that gap out. It's just like that cut wasn't great. Is what it looks like. I'll be able to fix that splinter though.
Sweet.
Can't believe I put those in upside down. All of them went in really easily except for that one that splintered out, and this one, and then this one caused that one to break. So it was just those two that were too tight. But hey, that means my hand-cut mortises are pretty dang consistent except for those two. That was intense.
Is this still recording?
Yeah.
Because you're about to have some steezy moves on there, dog.
Oh my god, it's so heavy draw. You're gonna have to go up high now. Can you walk it up higher?
I'm trying to.
I need just a couple inches. Holy fuck, that thing is heavy, dude. Alright, let's go wash hands.
Yeah.
That was insane. I hate hide glue. This is the most stressful thing I've ever done.
Mine's not as bad, but it definitely looks like someone got me in the hand. No, look at Ty's hands. Look how nasty that is. Looks like he just put a veneer on. See you later.
Croft, we made such a mess.
We?
I made such a mess. Hey, you were here. You were watching me.
And doing... and doing... What?
Doesn't matter. You're guilty by association, man.
Sounds like high school.
Yeah.
Like, man, I wish I had, like, muffin arms. So ladies can stop staring at them.
Still smells nasty.
I don't think that's gonna go away anytime soon, but...
I feel like when it dries, it will. Yeah, rewatching all that glue up made me so anxious. I ended up cracking the rail a little bit at that very top, but I was able to fix it. I ended up just gluing it back together, and it ended up not being a big deal at all, but so stressful to rewatch, and I didn't get great footage of the crack just because I was so embarrassed, but now I totally would have filmed it, you know, honest mistake. But right here on the drum sander, I'm just trying to flatten everything out and had to get really particular with the timing because I have those little angle pieces at the end. So I had to quickly drop the bed of the drum sander so that it wouldn't actually run in and actually break either the machine or the ends of that. But this actually saved me a ton of time. All the little like mortises and tenons where they lined up, the shoulders of the tenons didn't line up, I mean, perfectly. I mean, they never do. They ended up being like, you know, some spots were max, like 1/8 of an inch off. So running through the drum sander on 80 grit just helped make everything perfectly flat and line up seamlessly. A big glob of glue is where it cracked. You could see it there for a second. Now, I went ahead and made these top rail piece. So what this is going to do is when my client's daughter is climbing from the ground into her like elevated loft, she's going to be able to grab onto this big handle and swing her leg over and step over the ladder into the actual cubby hole. So this part ended up being really important, and it had to be super sturdy, hence why I did the mortise and tenons on it. But it actually turned out well, and this is just me gluing it on, and the glue up went so much better than the other glue up because, well, I had the mortise and the tenons facing the right direction because now I'm not silly. But you can also tell right there, I had to really be careful where I was rounding over with the router and where I wasn't, because where the mortise and tenons actually combined, I wanted there to be that cool like sloped look.
So I just had to completely not round over those areas, and now I'm going with the angle grinder, and this is a cut saw disc. It's the fine, I believe. And I'm just taking and removing the bulk of the material and going back over with a file, and I'm just hand filing and angle grinding all of these sections just to get it like kind of a sculpted, like really flow together look. And this is the absolute favorite part of this ladder and why the ladder was expensive, you know. And on the actual rails itself, there was a lot of chatter when I was cutting because that was a big 1-inch roundover I was using on the router table. So that little 1 horsepower router just couldn't handle it. It would have worked a lot better on my new shaper that I have now, but it was super easy just to take my spoke shave and clean it all up and make sure that everything was lining up nicely. Here's a fun fact. It actually took me longer to do the spoke shaving, filing, angle grinding, and sanding than it did to do the entire rest of the project, which is crazy. It took me like 3 days to file and sand everything, which is so wild, but well worth it. I mean, it turned out really well. I mean, I wasn't sure it was gonna work until I went through that entire process. Then I was just like, damn, like it all just flows together so well, and I really impressed and surprised myself. I didn't think it was gonna really look good. I mean, right before I took the angle grinder to it, I was like, oh man, I messed up so bad. I'm gonna have to refund this guy's money, and he's just gonna hate it, and I hated it, but I'm really proud of the way it turned out, and I believe that my client really likes it too. Now you can really hear my air compressor struggling to keep up with that pneumatic sander in the background, but my orbital just wouldn't have worked, and I just didn't have a choice. Every 5 minutes I just had to stop and let the air fill back up. It took forever, but it ended up working. So now I'm switching over to every spot where the ladder is going to touch either the floor or the wall. I've added one of those pocket holes, so then we could just screw it directly into the ground and the walls. Now, if you're curious about what color this ended up being, it's Rubio Monocoat, the Oil 2C+. I believe the bottom layer was just a layer of pure chocolate color, and then the second layer was a layer of watered down 2% white. So it ended up being like 1% white would be my guess. And the white just kind of whitewashed and got into the pores, and it just leave this really cool effect. And I ended up doing a top coat of just the regular Oil 2C+ on top of it, just to let it kind of pop, and you can see the grain a little bit better that way and gets a little bit of added protection. And because the watered down Oil 2C+ kind of popped the grain, it just didn't feel super smooth. So I went ahead and resanded everything with 220 grit and then added the clear coat, which left this beautiful and super strong finish.
All right, so my part of the ladder is now done. You can see it turned out pretty dang well. It fits the room really well, matches the white of the floor. We are putting on little sticky grips. I know I got a lot of comments saying that this is going to be too slippery because I sanded at 220 and whatnot. So we're putting on these little clear sticky grips, and they blend in pretty well. We got the little handle up here, just screwed in. Everything is pocket holes, so it fits super nice and flush. We had to reinforce the trim a little bit just because, well, the pocket holes are so dang strong it pulled the trim in. So we reinforced that. We haven't plugged those yet, so that's why they look like that, but it's going to look really great, and it's really dang sturdy. The ladder ended up weighing around 80 pounds was our guesstimate. So for it looking so light and delicate, all these hand-cut Morse tenons, this is going to last forever. I mean, this is going to be a really, really nice and strong ladder.
Let's go ahead and take a closer look at this ladder. I want to show you guys how it's jointed to the floor. It just has 2 pocket screws on either leg, and it just leaves a super clean look. And now you can get a closer look at those rungs. Each one of those curves were hand carved with a file and a spoke shave, and it just leaves a really cool look and has a really nice feel to it. It's all pretty round, but you can still feel that handmadeness to it. And I really like the way this turned out, and you can see all the curves